that's okay. That's the third handout that you have. And then the only thing that really is left, if you wish to go through it today, is the sheets that we have there on new staff, if there's a desire to go through and talk about those as well. But there's we're the bulk of the way through at this point. So if I can, I'm now referring to the document entitled Estimate of 2018 Uncommitted Reserves and Reserve Fund Balances. So just to let you know, this was organized a few years ago into categories to try and make it a little easier to cluster these and understand what the purpose is of these reserves. The working capital reserve is really an operating reserve that we would have in the event that we have unforeseen or time-specific operating pressures to assist with. And then you can see under program related, there's a number of them there. Just the one that I do want to point out, a couple of them, the winter operations, what we do try and do with winter operations, because it really fluctuates depending on weather patterns each year and so on, that to the degree that we may have extra money in the winter ops budget in a given year, we'd put money into the reserve. In a year where winter conditions warranted additional service, we would draw from the reserve. So it's intended to provide a little bit of a smoothing effect over time. Farmers Market is really something we assist that group in terms of managing or sort of maintaining some of the funds that are used and generated through the Farmers Market. And then we have some capital asset renewal and replacement reserves, and those are reserves that come from generally tax or it could be sources other than growth, other than development-related fees. And you can see in there, there's the one that's the library reserve, and that's one again that we maintain here, but the library accesses and uses through request to council. And I think there was a request this morning for accessing the library reserve, and so you can see that amount there. And just to let you know, this schedule, if you go over to the far column uncommitted fund balance, I'll just look for a nod to make sure I'm correct in this, but it should already incorporate all of the projects that are before you and proposed. So should you approve the entire capital program in its current form, these would be the projected balances. Should you reduce the capital program, these balances go up, and should you add to the capital program, those balances could potentially go down. So that's just to put that into perspective. The development and fee supported category at the bottom, just to note that you'll recall from that section of the budget, we had a separate tab for that, and there were 5 areas that were budgeted in the development and fee supported budget, and this is the place that those funds come into. So as we collect development related fees, they go into these reserve funds. As those operations are carried on, those reserve funds are used to fund those operations. You may find in a given year that our operational costs exceed fees coming in the door. You may have another year where fees coming in the door exceed operational costs, and so those reserve amounts will fluctuate. But our goal always is to ensure that they are sustainable over time. I can tell you that going back several years ago, around 2010 timeframe, we had some pretty significant shortfall positions in our development fee related reserves. We undertook some significant work internally to reassess fees and cost structures and so on, and I am personally very pleased with how those reserve funds have turned around in that period of time. Then you go on to page 2. There's development, water and wastewater rate funded reserves. We